Amos Oz wrote that the life of a Jew is like driving with the front window opaque and only the rear view mirrors to guide you. And Sarah Tuttle Singer writes from Jerusalem, this past year has felt exactly like that. The road ahead has been hidden, clouded by smoke and uncertainty, and the only way we've known where to turn has been by looking backward, back to the morning of October 7th, back to the long shadow of our history, back to the faces and voices of the people we carry with us even after they are gone. Every decision since then we have made with our necks craned towards memory. Every mile forward has been steered by what's already behind us. And yet somehow we do keep moving forward. Not gracefully, not without dents and detours, but still forward. The mirrors don't show us everything, but they remind us who we are and where we've been and what we must not forget. With the arrival of the new year, Tuttle Singer says, maybe our prayer is this, that we keep moving even through the fog, that memory continues to guide us, but that somewhere beyond the opaque glass, a meaningful road is waiting for us. So tonight, I would like to talk with you about another tool in the Jewish toolbox, beyond memory. There is something else that can help to guide our way and to guide our prayers just when we need them most. How do we see beyond the opacity of the front window? With imagination. What I can see through the window, through the lens of my prayers tonight, I can see the hostages, both the living and the dead, coming home to their families. I can see the exhausted soldiers coming home to collapse in the arms of their dear ones. I can see the rockets and bullets and ballistic missiles and drones come to a screeching halt. I can see Israeli children and Gazan children allowed to be children again. All this is easy to pray for, easy to imagine in the mind's eye. But I am also self-aware enough to know just how much I do not know. I do not know what it will take to get there. I do not know what it will take to make that vision a reality. I don't know if it's near or if it's far. I am not a military strategist. I am not a seasoned international negotiator, nor an experienced head of state who understands the theater of diplomacy and the chessboard of alliance building. I'm not an expert in Middle Eastern cultures. I am a rabbi, and I am a Jew. After 2 years of brutal war, like you, I stand and I sit and I stand this Yom Kippur with a broken heart and with a prayer in my hands. So what shall I pray for? For what shall we pray now? To answer this question, we need much more than opinions, and God knows we have a lot of opinions. I have an opinion about the Prime Minister's decision to recognize Palestinian statehood. You may have read my open letter to him. I have an opinion about the flotilla. I have an opinion about hunger in Gaza. I have an opinion about Jewish civilian violence in the West Bank. I have many opinions about Netanyahu. And with the clock ticking, I have more than one opinion about Trump's 20-point plan. There may even be news by now that we haven't yet heard. And I do also have an opinion about Israel's greatest generation of soldiers and reservists who are making sacrifice after sacrifice for the sake of the Jewish people everywhere. And yet, because I know there is so much that I do not know, I try to set all these opinions down tonight and turn instead to prayerful imagination. Einstein is there in that window. It's dark now, so you can't see him, but in the morning, You can find Einstein there, pointing up at the cosmos. Einstein said of himself, "I am enough of an artist to draw freely on my imagination, which I think is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world." Prayerful imagination picks up when knowledge runs short. Now, I thought it may have been a myth, but it turns out it's true. There really are many different Inuit words for snow. One for snow that is falling from the sky and one for snow that is on the ground. One for fine powdery snow and one for snow that has crusted over. One for heavy wet snow and one for snow floating on water, and on and on. It's impressive. Vocabulary is not only an indicator of what is common in the lives of the people who speak it, like snow for our fellow citizens in the Great White North. The vocabulary may actually point to how the people who speak it survive. It takes brilliance and ingenuity to survive all that snow and ice. It takes a dogged will to live in relative isolation and to develop applications for all those nuanced categories of snow. It takes a strong sense of self and attachment to the land of your ancestors in order to choose to remain there when others leave. And so it is for us. In Hebrew, there are many words for imagination. Dimyon, chazon, chalom, mar'ah, machsheva, nivu'ah. Rabbi Shapira of the Warsaw Ghetto teaches that prophecy is the highest form of imagination. And there is Yetzer and Yetzirah and Kavanah, Ra'ayon and Musag. There is even Tikva, the national anthem of Israel and the song of the Jewish people everywhere, because hope is a kind of imagination too. What does it say about us? What does it say about Jews and about Judaism that we have so many words for imagination? Each has its own distinguishing traits and attributes, just like snow, but they all have something to do with the capacity to imagine something that isn't yet. Our vocabulary is not only an indicator that imagining is common among Jews. It is not only an indicator of something we value, something embedded in our religious ideas and practice. Our vocabulary of imagination may also point to one of our own secrets for survival. We Jews pride ourselves on having a strong sense of imagination. We foster it in our children when we send them to open the door for Eliyahu Hanavi at the Seder. We foster it in ourselves when we serenade Eliyahu with the promise of Lishana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim Habnuyah, next year in a Jerusalem rebuilt. Who is this mysterious Eliyahu, the prophet, and why do we beckon him to drink from the untouched cup at the center of our tables? Moreover, what does Jerusalem rebuilt look like? What does it feel like? And how, oh how, do we get from here to there when the front window is so clouded by the news and the noise of a chaotic world? Jewish imagination is so thoroughly embedded into our rituals and sacred texts and ideas, so thoroughly a part of popular Jewish culture too, that we can miss it altogether if we don't pay attention. Take Yom Kippur, for example. When we wish each other Chatima Tova, a good seal, we imagine the book of life in which names are written and sealed for another year of life. When we shift our weight to stand for Kol Nidre, we imagine gathering with fellow Jews and crypto-Jews in the aftermath of the Spanish and Portuguese Inquisitions. With the legalistic formula of Kol Nidre, they gave cover to those who did what they had to do to survive, and we now do the same. Vishiva shel mala, uvishiva shel mata, by the authority of God and by the authority of this congregation, we hold it lawful to pray together with sinners. And tomorrow morning, when we take the Torah out from the Aron HaKodesh, it is the 10th of Tishrei. According to rabbinic imagination, Yom Kippur is the anniversary of the day, the very day when Moses came down from Mount Sinai the second time, with the second set of 10 commandments, the ones that remained whole. And on Yom Kippur afternoon, we imagine the high priest entering the Holy of Holies on the Temple Mount, and we are so awestruck at the memory of the sound of God's name that he could pronounce, but we no longer know how to pronounce. We imagine standing shoulder to shoulder with fellow Jewish pilgrims from throughout the lands, and we fall to the ground in praise and prostration. Imagination is a necessary ingredient for the prayer teshuvah endeavor. Throughout these sacred days, we imagine the finest version of ourselves, and we plan for how we can become that person. We see our flaws and our failings, we carry the weight of embarrassment and regret, and we imagine setting them all down. We imagine leaving behind our worst traits, or at least we imagine shrinking them down to size so that they don't paralyze us and overwhelm our lives. We imagine the God-given second chance, the turning of the page, another arrow in the quiver so we can try again, this time with greater skill, this time with greater insight, this time better equipped, this time more wholehearted. We imagine the good people who lift us up and how we can express our gratitude for how they sustain us. We imagine how strained relationships could be otherwise if only we tried a big gesture or a small gesture for mending. Why do we believe that imagination can steer us towards something better? Because we know that the very nature of the world is that it changes. And we who are part of the world are also built to change. That is part of God's miraculous design. So this Yom Kippur, we are at work. This is prayer and teshuvah at work. This is imagination at work. Now, do you know what word does not authentically exist in Hebrew at all? The word for fantasy. For that, we have to borrow from the Greeks. Israelis say fantasia. In the vast Jewish library spanning millennia and hemispheres, there is a relatively small fantasy section. Folktales and fiction galore, fanciful creatures in the heavenly realm, and here on earth too, yes, we have those. And Kabbalistic spheres, those too. But the vast majority of our written and oral tradition is rooted in what was, what is, and what actually could be. Prayer is not fantasy. Teshuvah is not fantasy. We do not say, this year I will be perfect. No, we say, this year I will do better. And we do not say, tomorrow there will be two states living side by side in peace and security. No, we say, this year, with a lot of heavy lifting, by a lot of trustworthy partners, we will do better, and we will begin to create the vision we seek. So when we talk about Israel, when we craft our prayers for Israel, it is important to discern between imagination and fantasy. Fantasies can be dangerous and even deadly. In the early 19th century, Prussia, Rabbi Natan Steinhartz, the primary disciple of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, wrote this prayer to help us discern between imagination and fantasy. V'lo yevalbel otanu, may our imagination not confuse us with deceitful illusions or evil fantasies, chas v'shalom, heaven forbid. Instead, may we attain the power of imagination that is worthy of clarity, lucidity, and the capacity for restoration. Tachlit hatikun. Before October 7th, it was a fantasy of the center that the status quo would hold. It was a fantasy of the left that if only we love the people of Gaza enough, they will want peace as we want peace. It is a fantasy of the right that the territories will be annexed by Israel. It was Trump's fantasy that he would develop Gaza's beachfront property to be the Riviera of the Middle East. It is the fantasy of many that if only this war would carry on a little longer, it could be the war to end all wars, also a fantasy. It is a fantasy of many that recognition of statehood is the same as statehood. Al chet shechatanu lefanecha. Forgive us, O God, for these fantasies. But imagination has also come from right, left, and center. Thank God for Iron Dome and all the defense technologies that continue to be perfected by Israel. I wouldn't dare to imagine what would have been these last 2 years without it. And the work of shared society among Jewish and Palestinian Israelis is the critical work, the critical imagination from the left. And I believe a strong Israel depends on this work becoming centralized and normalized. Imagination from the right came through the Abraham Accords. Trump showed the world that relationships can not only be struck, but can hold, not necessarily because of shared values, but because of shared interests. And the number of countries that are signaling their readiness to establish ties with Israel now is truly remarkable. It was, I admit, beyond my imagination. Israeli journalist Yaron Dekel taught me that the only war Israel was able to end itself was the War of Independence. Every other war needed the imagination and the intervention of other countries. So is this 20-point plan now on the table imagination or fantasy? God only knows, and time will tell. But I cannot help but hope for it. And what can we imagine right here at Holy Blossom Temple? Our family and friends in Israel are calling on diaspora Jewry everywhere to fill our sanctuaries to the rafters with our innermost prayers this Yom Kippur. Let us conjure up prayerful imagination powerful enough to meet and match their own. Let us imagine no more yellow ribbons, because the hostages will be home again. Let's imagine no more yellow chair on our bima, no more yellow piano in our Schwartz-Reisman atrium, because Alon Ohel will be home safe and, please God, also sound. Let's imagine having no more names of fallen soldiers to recite before Kaddish, no more wounded civilians to call into our prayers for Amisha Berach. Let us imagine how wonderfully boring our social media feeds would be. And let us imagine full teen trips to Israel again. Let us imagine a Holy Blossom family trip to Israel over winter break 2026. And let us imagine no more heavy silences on the phones when we call our Israeli friends and family. Let us imagine instead headline news about the regrowth of farms in the south and in the north. Let us imagine instead headline news about the rebuilding of Gaza, about textbooks in Gazan schools, and morning cartoons that teach children that their Israeli neighbors are also descendants of Abraham, just like them. Why is imagination so important for people who suffer? Vera Freiling was a Jewish teenager on the run from the Gestapo. She lived undercover in Berlin, and all the while she imagined herself, one day, a doctor, a psychiatrist in a free and far-off land. Imagination is how she kept hope alive, which in turn helped her to stay alive. After surviving the Nazis, the Soviet Army, and cancer, Dr. Freiling served on the faculty of the San Francisco Medical School, where she taught the following: imagination can help one transcend the insults that life has dealt us. There are people on every side and every border, including right here, who are so very tired and just want to get back to their lives, not in suffering and not in heroism either. Imagination seems to show up and thrive just when we need it most, when our senses and spirits are depleted, when the world we see is so far from the world we yearn for. This is when we need somewhere to go, and imagination takes us there, while not letting go of what it means to be in the here and now. So let me conclude with a beautiful teaching recorded in Midrash Tanchuma, which was compiled over many lands, Babylon, Italy, and Israel, and over many centuries, the 6th, 7th, and 8th centuries. The rabbis describe Chalomot HaTzadikim, the dreams of the righteous. They teach the dreams of the righteous are both in the heavens and simultaneously here on earth. Like Jacob, whose ladder was mutzav arza, standing with feet on the ground, and with its head magia hashamayma, reaching towards the heavens. Our sages, who were masters of imagination, suggest that Jacob did not dream the ladder, but Jacob was himself the ladder. Can you picture it? His feet were rooted in the soil, and his head reached towards the heavens. This is how Jewish imagination works. Not untethered to our lived experiences. It is that ladder connecting where we are now to where we want to be, and to whom we hope to become. We are in a moment that desperately calls out for imagination. So good people, guard it. I beg you, protect it. Make sure that your power of imagination is stronger than your fears, so that we might say with our Israeli siblings, Am hanetzach lo mefached miderech aruka. The people of forever are not afraid of the long road. Amen.